Hi, I'm your host, Megan Blissick, Director of Partnerships at Orita AI. Today on the Orita Podcast, I'm speaking with two Shopify heavy hitters, Ben Lord of SoftLimit and Mark Shesser of Coldsmoke Creative. Today we cover price and shipping tests that lift AOV without scaring customers away, tactical retention moves like loyalty, quizzes, and post-purchase magic that turn first-time buyers into die-hard fans, and we talk about the unsexy data cleanup that every brand needs before AI, Shop Pay, and next-gen channels rewrite the rules. If you're tackling tariffs, untangling your tech stack, or just want emails that drive revenue, not unsubscribes, this episode is full of smart and tactical advice. Press play and dive in. So, hi guys, Megan, Director of Partnerships at Orita. Really excited to be here with Ben and Mark. I'll let them introduce themselves and then we'll dive right in.
Ben, take it away.
All right, I'll take it away. Hi, I'm Ben Lord, founder of SoftLimit. SoftLimit specializes in Shopify strategy and solutions, and we help brands navigate and thrive in the e-commerce ecosystem.
Mark Shesser, I'm the founder and CEO of Coldsmoke. We are a certified Shopify Plus partner specializing in custom design, development, and strategy for high-performing ecom brands.
Amazing. And thank you both for attending and thank you both for speaking. Really excited to get some agency perspective, especially Shopify agency perspective today. So Mark, why don't we start with you? If you want to go a little bit into your background and your experience, we'd love to hear more about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. So my experience after college, I went to work for a incubator called Techstars and then joined one of the companies that was in the program as their first non-founding employee. That was a company called Remitly. They are not an e-commerce company. They are an international money transfer company. So a digital remittance company, meaning they allow for the transferring of money internationally. It's like Venmo, but for international payments. And that sounds like table stakes, but it actually is really complicated. And I think it really helped inform Coldsmoke and how we work with clients. You know, the complexity comes in when you layer in things like state and federal compliance and licensure and integrations with cash out providers on the other end of the transaction, not to mention building a stable and trustworthy digital product and convincing customers who are used to going to a physical place in their community that they trust to trust a new startup that they've never heard of with their hard-earned money, which may or may not have required me to host in-person karaoke parties to get our first customers to trust us. I'm not sure how that helped build trust, but it was something we tried anyways. And so while I was there, besides hosting karaoke parties, I played a small role in helping them scale from 5 employees to over 300. And as a product marketing manager, I sat at the intersection of marketing, design, engineering, finance, and compliance, and helped build a product and acquire customers through experiments and marketing promotions. And that all influenced the core mission of Coldsmoke, which is to help our clients grow their business through exceptional ecom experiences and experiments. And my time at Remitly, I think, showed me that it's really an interorganizational effort to collaborate across multiple expertises to win. And you know, to quote the great ecom philosopher Trey Anastasio, teams win. And so when we work with clients, we're generally bringing in experts on our team across multiple disciplines like design, strategy, engineering, project management, QA, and of course, bringing in great partners like Orita to ensure our clients are working with the best tools in the space outside of the Shopify platform itself.
That's awesome. I think we should definitely get into what some of that experimentation looks like. I think that's going to be something really interesting. But before we jump into that, what was your karaoke song?
I can't honestly remember. I have one memory of going to the Philippines. We had set up an office there and we went out with the whole team. Karaoke is very big there. And I think I was goaded into doing like an Eminem song. I think there's videos somewhere, which I don't ever want to see. But it's a core cringe memory of mine for sure.
All right, we're gonna
I
tap.
think we need to make this happen in New York.
All right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we can relive it.
Awesome. Well, we'll get together to karaoke after this. Ben, do you want to share some of your background as well? So everyone.
Sure. I have a very different background than Mark's. Let's see, I built my first website in 1996. So I've been doing this for a long, long time. After college, I started working in the music industry, doing very early promo cards and flash cards for artists at Atlantic Records. From there, I took a break and was doing the touring musician thing for a long time, and then transitioned to a marketing agency where we were doing more entertainment clients and work in that space. Anything in that space was work from building sites for Metallica through doing work for Amex and whatever else. But I spent a few years there before, again, dropping out and going back on the road doing the musician thing. But this time it was a little bit different because I transitioned to being a fully remote employee at that time, and that was doing it all fully remotely, I should say. So long before the world shut down, I was sitting in the back of the van with Wi-Fi and building websites. Built my first e-commerce website in 2011. Been, solidly focused on Shopify ever since, and the agency has grown up through those years.
Is the favorite place you've toured?
Favorite place I've toured? That's a great, meaning city or country? I don't know if I have a favorite place. I have favorite drives. There's a stretch. There's two stretches that I love driving through. One is in, I guess, Western Tennessee through the Smokies. It's one of the more beautiful drives in the country, I think. And then also in like northern, I guess, Eastern Washington, where it cuts through the tip of Idaho, is one of the more beautiful drives also. So those are my two places where I'm always awake to drive through them.
All right.
What about
Karaoke?
favorite venue?
Favorite venue? That I like some of the New York venues. I love Bowery. It's a great spot.
Well, we have very different backgrounds, but two amazing founders of some really awesome agencies. Let's talk about what people are really thinking about these days. And I think, Mark, we can kind of go back to that experimentation. When it comes to different channels, what are you really seeing people experimenting with right now, especially in the face of tariffs and rising costs kind of across the board, acquisition going up? Like, what are you seeing and where are you seeing people putting their dollars?
Yeah, so I think as it relates to tariffs, price testing is really important. So having a tool that enables you to do price testing, so you can see where are your clients, or your customers rather, where are they willing to spend and where are they going to kind of pull back. Having a tool that makes it easy to run price tests across not just your product prices, but also things like your shipping threshold and all across the site. So being able to run a price test on your products, what's the impact if you lower your prices versus what's the impact if you raise it, but also the free shipping threshold, for example. We ran a test recently that showed that there wasn't a significant decrease in conversion if you went from a $50 free shipping threshold to $75 free shipping threshold. But you were able to increase the AOV without significantly decreasing the conversion rate. Being able to run tests like that is really important in these uncertain times.
No, that's so interesting. Ben, are you seeing anything similar, different? What's your perspective on this?
Definitely, I think that the price testing has been very on trend lately. And I think just generally speaking, brands are leveraging, even beyond testing, they're just making decisions that they're making micro changes to their pricing, and they are increasing pricing or they are changing their shipping thresholds across the board.
Are we seeing in terms of raising pricing, I think like it was interesting, Mark, to say that, keeping the price the same, but changing that shipping threshold pushes up that AOV. So it looks like there's different ways for people to play with that price and like kind of protect themselves without it actually raising. Are we also seeing any change in the way people are doing promotions and discounts, especially in terms of like that first order discount that we've all gotten so used to? I'll pass that one to you.
Yeah, sure. We haven't seen a lot of people actually changing things. There has been a lot of conversation around it, though. Whether it be just small changes of dropping it from 20% down to 10%, or an actual dollar amount, so that it is a little bit more structural, and just like you know exactly what the discount's going to be. That's definitely, again, part of the conversation, but we haven't seen a lot of change there.
Okay. Do you think, Mark, have you seen anything?
Similar, and I was going to pose a question. So we've been asked a lot, like how have brands been reacting to tariffs? And from our perspective, we've started to see it really impacts some of our customers, but some of the majority of them are kind of just in this like wait and see mode. Like it's kind of like business as usual. I mean, it's not business as usual, but it's like, well, we don't really know what's going to happen, so we're just kind of like charging along. We did have one client or prospective client recently say that they're making a decision in the future. They didn't re-up or do an order for a new fall line. So they didn't. It was just like the impact of the tariffs was going to be too expensive. So they're just going to stick with their like evergreen products and not do a refresh in the fall. And then I've heard some other clients talking about how it's just been like kind of a nightmare dealing with like the factories and everything going on over there, but they haven't made that many changes actually on the ecom side aside of testing some things. I don't know if either of you have seen like huge impacts or if it's more of that like just wait and see.
I think that there are brands that are solely acting out of fear right now, and they're kind of putting themselves in a precarious position by doing things like ordering too much stock. Or and I heard recently of a brand that put all of their, rather than putting stuff on a boat to meet the tariff deadline, they put everything on an airplane and got it here quicker, right? And spent a lot more money doing that.
Yeah.
But then the tariffs got dropped or they got drastically reduced or whatever. So those brands that are acting out of fear, I think, are putting themselves in a kind of a bad position versus the ones that are saying, you know what, we've been here before. We did this a few years ago, not specifically with tariffs, but we were all scared shitless recently. And, it's fresh in their memories. And, they're just taking a different approach, and they're taking a little bit of a lighter approach and a little bit softer of an approach this time around.
Okay. So you make a great point, right? Like, don't overreact. We don't know what's happening next. But how can brands really be prepared when the answer is we don't know what's happening next? What are some ways that they can kind of insulate or protect themselves, their margin? And like, what tactics are you either seeing or recommending?
I think that it's exactly what we've already been talking about. Like, do what you can to make small adjustments without scaring off any of your customer base, right? Like, if it is changing those discount offers, that's something subtle that no one's going to say, "Oh my God, they're raising the prices on me," or anything like that. Those things that are going to affect your bottom line positively one way or another, and just set you up for success.
Agreed.
No, and I think that's such an important, I mean, that's kind of an important mentality to have at all times, right? Is these small adjustments are the ways that we really take a program from good to great. But both of you have been in this space for a while. What are some kind of like outdated notions that the brands have that they need to drop of like how things used to work versus how they do operate now, especially in a much more crowded and much more competitive landscape?
I think to Ben's point, not necessarily biting off more than you can chew or doing like a huge redesign or huge, like blow up of what's working, rather than doing a full redesign or like, trying to do everything at once during a migration or something like that. Like doing things in stages and making like small iterations rather than like huge changes all at once. Stay medium.
Ben, anything to add there?
I'm trying to think on that one. I'm a little bit stuck. I don't know. Things that are no, I don't know. I think that there's so much in the Shopify space that has changed over the years that there is no staying still. And I think the brands that are staying still and aren't changing things are the ones that are going to be missing out in the just currently. And what I mean by that is the way that things have been done historically in Shopify themes in Shopify setup. There's not a lot to it, right? You set up your product, and then the majority of the time, the content and the data and everything in a store is set up in the theme. That's an outdated setup system that no one should be doing anymore. And I think that from our point of view, one of the big things that we're helping a lot of brands do right now is getting their data ready for what the future looks like, and getting their data ready for how they can grow grow their own business, but just also grow within the Shopify setup and systems architecture that's changing pretty rapidly. And it's all changing because of AI. It's changing because of the way the bots are reading things. So I think an old outdated system is one that is legacy. Things are hard coded, things are built into the theme rather than being portable and a system that they can move.
And bringing up data, our favorite four-letter word. Brands have a lot of it, and a lot of them don't know what to do with it. So how does a brand really capitalize on that first party and that zero party data that they are collecting? Because all of these apps, all of these stores, they're all passing so much information back and forth. At Orita, whenever we run an email audit, we see millions, if not over a billion data points that are just simply in their email program. And that's just one piece of their overall business. So how can brands really leverage their data to make really smart, informed decisions and keep them ahead of the curve?
I take it, Mark.
Sure. I think the first step is you have to intentionally collect it. To your point, Megan, there's probably a lot of brands out there that either aren't collecting it or don't know that they're collecting it. So I would say that step one is being intentional about collecting it, whether it's through the different apps and partners that you're using, whether it's through quizzes on the pre-purchase side or surveys on the post-purchase side, and then making it a regular practice within your organization to share those learnings and insights, and ensure that you're passing it along to your marketing team so that they can use it in their marketing messaging, in paid ads, in emails, in SMS, sharing it with your product team, getting data from reviews, for example, to inform product decisions or the different marketing messaging. If you notice that in your reviews, customers are constantly highlighting certain things that they like or don't like, you can use that in your messaging. You can use that in your product roadmap. So number one, intentionally collecting it. And then number two, distributing it to the different stakeholders in your organization so they can leverage it.
Yeah, I think it's setting yourself up a roadmap to use that data. Because you're totally right that when brands start installing apps and they start collecting, they're not connecting the pieces more often than not. And there's obviously so much of a push right now between various apps in the ecosystem to make their footprint bigger and bigger. And with that, collecting data that can supposedly talk to other pieces of their app, but whether or not the brands are taking the time to set that up is a different discussion entirely. Generally speaking, they're not, but they should be, because personalization is the name of the game at this point, and it's only going to become more so. And every little touch point is going to matter. And whether that be personalized product recommendations on down to just making the experience tailored to certain segments of people, it just depends on how personalized you want to get. But all of those data touch points are going to make a massive difference to the front end experience, because the way people shop is changing. The way people will be shopping a year from now will look vastly different, I think, than it looks currently. And so all of those points are going to have to connect back to the customer and be utilized in a way that makes their experience better.
That makes a lot of sense. Why aren't brands connecting these different apps and
Too
tools?
much. They don't know what it is. We look under the hood all the time of brands and it has to do with any number of things, right? Brands have new people on the team that don't know how it was set up before, or whatever it may be. But I think so often there are connected pieces, or this app was installed and that app was installed. Somebody new came in and installed this other app. We don't know that app's still existing and what it's doing. And no one's taking the time to look under the hood and make sure that the pieces are connected, other than, generally speaking, surface level. There's a lot of like, oh, if I just click this integration button, I'm done. And that's not really the case.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of those normal like organizational issues where people have a lot of different responsibilities. And to Ben's point, like something was set up by someone else, they came in, they don't really know how it works. And it's so common when we speak to brands that they either don't know where the data lives, or they know where the data lives, but they don't trust the data for one reason or another. And they have 1,000,001 responsibilities. And so it's hard to like spend the time, if they have the knowledge, it's hard to spend the time to dig yourself out of that hole and build the proper like reporting and dashboards to make it, put it in a place where it's actually usable and trustworthy.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think something that happens for all of us in the technology and agency side is that, we're day in, day out. We understand these apps back, forth, and sideways. But when it comes to that brand side, like you said, Mark, people have a million and one things to do, and different people, like you said, Ben, are adding these apps at different times. So what are some guidelines you would have for brands? Like some of the questions that they should be asking before they put another piece of technology in place?
Consult with somebody first, because I think that several of the apps are building out features just to have the feature and to, again, to expand that footprint. Whether or not they are the best at that, that service, that new service offering. So it's very easy to get sucked into a sales call and say, yeah, these 5 things under one roof, done. Makes it so easy. But you might not be getting the best of X and the worst of Y. So you have to consult with somebody to find out which is actually where the truth in all of that lies. Because sales teams are sales teams. They got to get you. And our goal is usually to try and help people make informed decisions when they're going through that process.
Yeah, Ben, I'm curious if you've seen this, and Megan too. Over the last several years, there was this big push for tech consolidation, and the big trend was well, you're already using this app for this thing. Why use a different app for this other feature, which now App X also supports? And I think to your point, I think there's kind of this unbundling happening where folks are more interested in working with the best player for X feature. Or that's what we're seeing, at least. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, and it's even starting to be reflected in the way some of the tools are pricing, right? Whether or not they were previously bundled all under one roof, moving to now individual pieces cost a certain amount. I don't know what the best outcome is for this though, because on the one hand, I really do appreciate the bundled aspect, because again, if the data is there and the tools are built smartly, then that data connects automatically and it does exactly what it needs to do. But a lot of times that's not the case, and tools are just kind of slapped together, and they're not technically under one roof, right? They're just cobbled together piecemeal tech stack.
But they're in the same marketing deck. They're in the same sales
in the
deck.
same marketing deck, exactly. Yeah.
They all sit next to each other on the slide.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So it does come down to more than just marketing, right? It is understanding the tools and the value that they actually provide in the ecosystem.
But Ben, you do bring up a good point though. And this is, I've watched this pendulum swing a couple of times. When we're in a good spot economically, people feel better investing in the best in class of each technology, right? Like I don't need a bundle of 3 mediocre products. I want to go out and get the best ones. When things get a little trickier, like when times get uncertain, and now also with all this data, we want it all in one place so that you're not trying to teach A to talk to B to talk to C. So I've watched it go back and forth a few times, but I think there's definitely a case for both, right? It is nice to have everything under one roof, and hopefully that roof actually does cover everything, but it's also really nice to have that best in class. So is there a point where a brand is either mature or not mature enough to go with one of these strategies wholesale? Is it, because I'll be real, sometimes you don't actually need the best in class tool if you're starting off, if you're entering a new program. Maybe you do need the thing that's very easy to use and spin it up and test out that new channel versus going and getting the Cadillac immediately. So what is your advice for different brand sizes when playing that consideration?
And what does best in class actually even get you? Best in class can often mean has been around longest or has the biggest name too in this industry. And that's not always the case. So you're totally right that at a certain level for certain brands, you do not need to go out and get the Cadillac right out of the gate, right? There are tools to help you scale to that. If you're really concerned about being in a system that can grow, then you look for the tool that allows for that. You don't look for the tool that is the cheapest just because it's the cheapest. You look for one that can scale with you, has a small starter plan and can grow up from there. But yeah, I don't think that there is a hard and fast answer, because we are seeing big brands at this point change their shift in their apps, or shifting their apps to different price points for the same tech, just because they're seeing and they're feeling like they're getting squeezed. I think a lot of merchants are feeling like they're getting squeezed from SaaS price increases, and they're not sure where the value is coming from in those price increases, other than increasing a price to increase a price and increase their own bottom lines. And so merchants and brands don't want to feel like they're the ones getting squeezed on that end of things. And I think everyone's very sensitive to it right now. And bringing this all kind of full circle to the original topic of this conversation, everyone's very sensitive to pricing on anything at this point.
Yeah, I'm seeing merchants, especially. I'm sure you have seen the same thing, but when the price increase is like, there's no additional value being created or given in terms of features or functionalities, but it's just like the merchant sales have gone up. Like if it's based on either a percentage of sales or like a band of a sales band, and the price goes up, and it's not due to usage or bandwidth or anything like that, merchants are kind of like, well, why?
Yeah.
And that, that makes it harder for them to operate because, e-commerce businesses are hard. Margins are tough to come by.
Yeah, it feels like a tax, right? And and no one likes to be taxed more than their fair share. And I think that most merchants are totally willing to pay for the right tool that's going to show them the ROI. But yeah, if that additional value is not really just there out of the gate, or if they're not getting support to squeeze that additional value out, then it's questionable if it makes sense.
And I think this actually is a good one for our friends in the tech world, because I think that ROI isn't always like, I'm on the tech side, right? And we see these amazing ROI numbers. And then we also hear like that's not high enough to justify the cost. So I think sometimes folks don't realize how thin those margins really are. And you may make a brand twice as much revenue, but if they still have to pay for your tool and that revenue doesn't match up to that margin, then it's actually not going to be worth it. So what are ROIs, or what are margins that on that tech side folks should be aware of? Like what are brands really dealing with, especially when it comes to these rising costs across the board, both in their different tech products as well as their actual products, stock, anything like that?
Thankfully, I don't have to manage a P&L for an ecom brand, so I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I know certainly a big part of what brands are spending on is customer acquisition and audience. So, before you even get a sale, you're paying for traffic to come to your site. And then there's all the other stuff that I don't see, like on the production side and shipping and fulfillment. So, you're either paying for your audience to come to your D2C site, or you're paying huge costs on Amazon, for example, to not have to buy an audience, but you're paying for it sort of no matter what.
And those acquisition costs, speaking of prices that go up without any return. So are you guys seeing folks really focusing more on that retention, that life cycle piece of the business, because acquisition's getting expensive? We're not sure how much stock we're going to even have, or if we can import our goods because tariffs may or may not hit. Are you seeing people's priorities shift a bit more to focus on the customers they already have versus trying to continue filling the top of that funnel?
Absolutely, and if they're not, they should be. I think that there is definitely more to be found in the retention side, and it's an uphill battle on the marketing side and the digital ads and everything. Obviously, there's going to be return there, but the margins are going to be thin. But working with the customers that you already have is a no-brainer, and it's just a matter of trying to continually build more and more data around each of those customers. And making sure that you are hitting them at the right moments and talking to them when they want to be spoken to. I think that is paramount to success right now.
Yeah, 100%. You've already paid to acquire a customer. So it only makes sense to deepen your relationship with them and get that ROI up on, the first time that you acquired them. We're definitely seeing folks focus on it more. I think it is one of those things that sometimes falls by the wayside just due to bandwidth. There is so much emphasis on growth at all costs. But I think that's why there's so much opportunity in focusing on retention and deepening your relationship with your existing customers, because so many people are just focusing on the growth, that if you do take the time, and it does take time, and there's a difference between having a loyalty program or a membership program and doing it well. And typically the difference there is like time and thoughtfulness and actually like listening to your customers and spending the time to do it right. But if you can make that investment, You're going to increase the lifetime value of the customer and really justify the cost to acquire that customer in the first place.
Loyalty programs in particular are really challenging and really hard.
Hard.
I think that it happens all the time. We see it all the time where a brand will come to us and they'll have a loyalty program, but it'll have two people in it, or something like that. And then you start to dig in deeper, and where are you promoting this? How are you showing this to people? Where are you working this into your email flows? And they're just simply not. They put up a loyalty page, they mentioned it once in a post, and that's it. And it's got to go so much deeper than that. And it's got to be constant. And you've got to remind people kind of at every step. And again, the connection points of like, do you know their birthday? Do you know these additional things about them? Do you know what type of hair they have or whatever, so that you can show them the right, products when they are spending those points? You've got to go deeper, and those programs are really challenging. And I think, just to Mark's point, the retention piece of this, you've already paid for those customers. You've got to keep them, and you've got to keep them coming back.
Yeah, and maybe the program has 2 people, or maybe it has a ton of people, but they haven't actually availed of the benefits because they either don't know or don't understand, like, well, what does 100 points mean? Right. Or they haven't been reminded that they have cash store credit, or whatever your benefits and perks are, or they know about them but they just don't care about them because you've never surveyed your customers and asked, what do you care about? What would make you come back and repeat purchase with us, beyond points or discounts?
Yeah, it's often not about points, right? Points are confusing. Points are an abstract thing. If you join a loyalty program to get free shipping, you're more likely to see people probably take advantage of that, right? The things that are just like quick experiential things that are going to make your life better as a customer, not just save you a couple bucks, but free shipping or expedited shipping or whatever it may be. Those that turn the up.
I mean, I think we're already kind of halfway into it, but like, what are some of the hallmarks of a really strong loyalty program? Just to keep on that thread, because it seems like there's a lot of ideas here around it, and I like it.
I think you have to create an experience that feels custom for your VIPs and for your loyalty members, versus an experience like a purchase experience that feels the same for everyone. And I think a program needs to create a seamless and frictionless purchase and program management experience. So hopefully your standard e-commerce site is frictionless, but you also want that same frictionless experience for your membership program or your loyalty program. Like, to Ben's point, like, points are confusing. So how do you make it more clear how to use the benefits of the program? And then what about the program is unique about your brand and your customers that makes it really sticky? This is a non-e-commerce example, but I want to shout out the Golfer's Journal, which is a print journal, a quarterly print journal that's like, beautiful. And if you're a member, you get access to that journal. But also within your membership fee, you get, discounts across their different partners. You get access to a Discord community, and then you get access to sign up for a lottery for these like 50 or maybe more golf events throughout the year at these great courses with that community. And so anytime that you're thinking about churning, like maybe one of those things doesn't excite you anymore, you also have to think about, well, I'm going to lose access to all of these other amazing benefits and things, whether it's the community, whether it's the events that you care about, whether it's the discounts because you shop a lot. So I think they've done a really good job of like curating this community and creating a loyalty program, even though it's a bit atypical to our audience. But I think there's some learnings you can take and apply that to an e-commerce brand.
Awesome. No, I think you're also bringing up a couple of those like really important points, like having multiple things that appeal to people, having something that justifies that cost, that feels like you are getting more than the actual cost itself. Ben, do you have a favorite loyalty program you want to talk about?
No, I don't know that I'm a member of any active loyalty programs. To tell you the truth, I mean, I don't know that there's any that like suck me in the right way, right? That will just like pull me in and like say like these are the features that I need. And again, I think that that's like that speaks to the complexity of loyalty. It's you really have to get members interested in what you're selling. And from that point of view, though, we work with a number of record labels, and I think that that is a space that is just like ripe for loyalty. Um, and it tends to be overlooked in the space though, because even though it's like it's kind of where it all begins, right? Like you think back to the record clubs or like a fan club or anything like that. That needs to be part of the experience now. And those are the things that got people excited in the 1960s or whatever, and they still work today. If you're going to be like, you're going to get the first copy of this before it comes out for anybody else, those types of things that you have to think about it from what excites this customer, what's going to keep them excited about this moving forward.
Early access is also a great margin protector. Even if you're just giving people the chance to have it before anyone else, don't even need to offer a discount. They just get that access. Yeah. And I think that's like a very interesting point as well, because that community aspect can also be an acquisition tool, right? Like you get that community of advocates, of people that love your product or your service, and they are talking about it and they're trying to find different ways to use it. And when you create those public communities and spaces, it allows for asking questions. It allows for a lot of that social proof. So rather than spending all that money on acquisition, if you're focused on that loyalty and that retention piece, it can actually drive a lot more of that customer acquisition. People are posting photos of the product and posting reviews, and when those items incentivize, it can help on that front end. So it really just kind of goes back that, that loyalty piece it can help every piece of the business, and it can really help a smaller brand grow and establish themselves in the marketplace and create that almost like cult-like following when you get onto these different platforms to really get that attention and differentiate, as well as having that actual customer perspective.
Yeah. And I think that it's worth mentioning too, that loyalty does not have to exist as a loyalty program, right? That community aspect of it can live all by itself. So long as a brand is authentic and speaking to their core audience in the right way, in a way that connects, the loyalty will be there. I think a perfect example of this, and a brand that has not launched a loyalty program, is the Perfect Gene, right? They nailed their brand voice from day one. They have an irreverent and just fun time doing everything that they're doing, and because of that, the people that shop at the brand are having the exact same reaction that they're putting out, right? It's all coming back. So like the UGC that they get is just like guys taking silly pictures of themselves in their jeans, right?
Yeah.
And it's just because that's what they're putting out there and that's what they're getting back, and it's just like a full circle of just this great brand coming to life with its community. So again, I don't think it has to necessarily be traditional loyalty to build loyalty.
Shout out Avadia. That was the first case study I wrote at Orita was on the Perfect Gene. They're fantastic. Also, their Halogen party, top tier.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've talked about loyalty. What about new brands? What about those few folks that decided right now is the time to enter e-commerce? What are some of the things you would do day one? Say both of you got bored of your agencies. You're like, I know how to do all these things. I'm just going to launch a brand myself. What are some steps you would take to set yourself up for success? What are some of the first things you would do, really, just to jump into it?
I think it sort of ties into what we were talking about. And I don't know, maybe this is either obvious or silly to say because it's so difficult. But if we're saying a hypothetical, just given how competitive it is these days, I would try and start by building the audience before the launch. Maybe even before building or designing your product, because then your audience could actually inform what product you're building or what you're selling. Just generally, distribution and audience capture is everything right now. So if you have an audience that's already waiting to buy your product, that'll give you such an advantage. And you can do this through content or a community like we talked about, or just somehow earning trust in a specific niche. The brands that are winning right now, whether they're existing or launching as new brands, they already own their audience and their traffic, and they don't necessarily have to pay for it all. Otherwise, if you're a net new brand, you're either paying Meta for your audience or you're paying like a marketplace like an Amazon.
Yeah, the brand starts before the website, right? And I think that a strategy that we've, people have been doing this for forever, but we've seen more and more of it lately, of this phased approach of like, we're going to put up a landing page for 3 months before this site goes live, and we're going to just drive tons and tons of traffic there. And then we're going to do maybe a pre-order for a couple months before product's actually live, and just this like rolling phased approach to building excitement and building engagement. And along the way, the website exists, it starts to exist, and it starts to get content, and it starts to get a little bit of, whether it be blog posts or whatever it may be, but it starts to be a place for people to visit if they are part of those communities, or if they are messaging in the same threads that you're messaging in. So just that you can show that and build that prior to ever hitting, publish on your first product.
So I think we brought this up earlier with Amazon, actually, and this is a good point, is you aren't paying for your audience, but that means that you don't own them. So there's tons of brands that have a great product on Amazon, but they can't even get those email addresses of those customers. They can't figure out who that is. So if they want to go direct to consumer, it's almost like starting a new brand. So have either of you worked with any brands that are shifting from that Amazon approach into that owned channel? And do you have any insights or advice on that front?
We've worked with a couple. I mean, predominantly our customers are more focused on the B2C side, but we've worked with and talked to some brands that they found some success on Amazon. And now, for the reasons that you mentioned, because they don't own their customer, they want to build out the D2C channel. I have seen that that's harder than it sounds. Like, it's not just throwing up a landing page and hoping people will come because they came to your Amazon site. Doing things that don't violate your agreement with Amazon, like building out a rebate program or throwing QR codes into your packaging to bring them to register onto your site. You can use a tool like Bridge, for example, to get as much of that traffic from the purchases that you're getting on Amazon over to your D2C site and start building and nurturing a relationship that way is, one method that we've seen work.
That's smart. Just get them after that first purchase into your amazing loyalty program on your site. So casual.
Exactly.
Front.
Most of the brands that we've worked with have not led with Amazon. They've eventually gotten to Amazon, or eventually caved and put products on Amazon, is usually the way that it goes. However, we had worked with brands in the past that have fought a similar battle with Etsy, and started their brand on Etsy, and it built to something that was more or less unsustainable under the platform that they're working with. And so they need to scale, and they need to be in a system that scales. And so that transition can be, I would assume it's very similar to the transition from Amazon to D2C. And you have to figure out a strategy to start to market to those clients, or to those customers, and make sure that they know where to go and find you now that you're slowly rolling back on your Etsy shop or whatever it may be. Yeah, so no direct experience, but similar.
That's an interesting thought with Etsy, though, because you can communicate with your customers on Etsy, which is a bit different than that Amazon experience, which is very, very cut and dry. Do you know if there's rules around that on Etsy too, or?
I don't know if there are. It's been few and far between for us, but I think it comes down to the brand ownership, and brands wanting to own their space and have their site really feel like their own, and start to collect more and more of that data. And I really think that's like the major piece of it, is having that true marketing moment rather than sitting within a marketplace.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Mark, you kind of broached on this with, mentioning Bridge and having like your branded QR codes that can direct people to the right place, say to either register a product or sign up for a loyalty program. But is there an underrated tactic, channel, something that people aren't using now that they should start leaning into?
Specifically with like moving from Amazon to D2C?
Just in general.
Just in general. I would say, not to be a total Shopify shill, But and I don't know if this counts as an emerging channel, but it still surprises me how many brands aren't leveraging accelerated checkouts and Shop Pay in particular. And just adding Shop Pay if you're on Shopify, of course. Although now I think you can add it on Salesforce. Did I see that? Which is really interesting. But just adding that can have a huge boost in conversion rates. I think it's something like having one-click checkout can make shoppers up to 75% more likely to check out. And it just goes back to kind of what we were talking about too, just making things like as frictionless as possible. I mean, I know I use Shop Pay, like it just as a shopper, I use Shop Pay anytime it's offered. So I think, we see that when brands are adding that, it can start to be up to like 25% of their checkouts. So folks are really using it. And I think it's a major benefit to building on Shopify is they have like 150 million registered Shop Pay users. And so if anyone's ever shopped on another Shopify site, which as they grow, like the likelihood of that goes up and up, those customers they already have their shipping and payment information saved, and it makes it that much easier to check out. I mean, just think about how easy it is as a consumer to buy something on Amazon because everything's already saved. So you can literally just like one-click checkout, and that's becoming more ubiquitous across Shopify sites. So if you're on Shopify, you should enable.
Piggybacking on that, I think Shop Pay is a really good tool. I think the Shop app, which I'll come back to in a second, is like an even add-on bonus to that's hugely important right now. But I do think that where Shopify is going with Shop Pay and what it can make possible in the near future is really exciting because that experience of having to go to Amazon and, sure, all your information is stored there. You can shop across whatever type of products. But with Shop Pay, that starts to happen across different websites, across, the entire landscape of e-commerce pretty much, right? Or a vast majority of it. And if you can bounce from shop to shop to shop and still be logged in, no matter what, when you're going through those experiences and everything starts to become personalized or segmentized down to who you are as a shopper, because you're just there. You're a known entity, no matter the store that you land on. So that for me, I totally agree with you, Mark, that's a really important piece of the puzzle. Maybe for slightly different reasons, though. I think like looking forward to what it can bring. But then I think the Shop app is a great tool and very underutilized tool in the Shopify ecosystem too, as a sales channel. We're seeing stores that are just not even knowing that it's turned on, and there being revenue coming through it, right? and product reviews, right? And they're getting this information and these sales through a tool that they barely know exists or don't know exists. And then they go in and they're like, oh my God, that's not even a branded experience. We don't even have our logo up there, or our collections aren't properly merchandised or anything like that, but their products are showing up out in the wild as connected products for people. And I think that brands that are right now, before costs go up, taking advantage of very, very cheap advertising and marketing within the shop are getting some great incremental revenue wins.
So we are coming up on time. So I'm going to ask both of you for a prediction and a plug. So tell us something that you are bullish about in the upcoming months, and then anything that you want to plug to our, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands of listeners right now. Ben, I'll start with you.
Things I'm bullish about right now. I think that data. I think that the data is key to everything moving forward. I'm a broken record on it right now. I think internally and externally. I think that brands that are doing what they need to do now to set themselves up for all those new fields that are showing up in your Shopify dashboard, whether it be taxonomy and taking advantage of meta fields and meta objects and getting their site set up for I don't want to say a headless future, but a future where shopping is different, because I don't like headless, but a future where shopping is different and the channels are different is the one thing that I'm very bullish on.
And a plug from you?
I don't know. What am I going to plug? Cherry Coke? No, just SoftLimit. That's it. That's my only plug.
SoftLimit, everyone. All right, Mark, wrap us up.
I will. I'm going to piggyback. I totally agree. Data above everything. And I think if you can make testing and data-driven decisions a core part of your organization, you're going to be set up for success. So in order to do that, try and make testing something weekly, not just monthly or quarterly or once a year around the holidays. The brands that are doing this, making this a core part of their organization and testing weekly are going to be the ones that win. And you get compound interest on your learnings the more experiments that you run. So if you can leverage these tools that are coming out that are making testing a lot easier, like a Visually or an IntelliGems, that can help you run more tests more often to continuously like make those small changes and iterations like Ben was talking about earlier, you're going to see that's where you see the huge compound wins. And we can help you with that at Coldsmoke.
There's the plug.
There
Nice.
it is.
And
Amazing.
Cherry Coke.
Again, everyone, I'm Megan, Director of Partnerships at Orita. If you ever want to see what's happening in your email data or direct mail data, pop on over to orita.ai to learn more about that. But thank you guys so much for your time. Love having some of the best partners on the podcast and also getting to host. This is so fun. But yeah, thank you. And folks that are listening, if you have questions, drop them in the comments and we'll get around to that. But yeah, thank you guys for coming.
Thanks,
Thank you, Megan.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Orita helps brands maximize campaign revenue with AI customer segmentation. Our powerful, easy-to-use segments make email, direct mail, and SMS campaigns smarter, more profitable, and uncover missed sales from high-intent customers while boosting click rates and inbox placement. And we optimize profitability across your lifecycle without you switching platforms, hiring a data scientist, or just crossing your fingers.